Consulting firm SBM Intelligence has released a report on the economic cost of insecurity in Nigeria. Now, while the effects of COVID-19 on Nigeria's economy have been front and center, we had a 6.1% contraction in Q2 2020. Should be remembered that Nigeria's insecurity issues precede the pandemic and continue to be a drag on the resources of Africa's largest economy. The report from SBM Intelligence looks at the impact of insecurity on the tourism and maritime sectors and what needs to be done to improve things. Joining me to discuss the report is Ikemesit Effiong, Head of Research at SBM Intelligence. Good morning to you, Ikemesit. So to kick things off, if you say Sambisa forest to the average Nigerian, the Chibok girls and insecurity come to mind. But apparently, as revealed in your report, the British colonial administration had tourism plans for it. Can you talk us through that?
Yes, so the whole point 2 years before independence was that the British colonial authorities went through a significant mapping exercise all across the country to identify areas, hotspots, and locales across the country that had significant tourism potential. And Sambisa was actually selected as one of those areas. Now, fast forward to the 1970s, 1977 precisely, right? And Sambisa Forest was actually regazetted, right, by a Nigerian administration for designation as a national park. Sambisa Forest is part of the wider Lake Chad Basin region. It's a biodiversity hotspot. There are diverse species of such animals as lions and hyenas, and as well as 62 species of birds, right? And so this part of the country, much like pockets of Ondo State, much like pockets of Cross River and Adamawa and Taraba states, was penciled down as a location that had significant tourist potential. Now, as we all know, over the past decade and a half, the moniker of the Sambisa Forest is associated with insecurity, with the insurgency, and with the general instability that has characterized that region. And it just speaks to the lost potential that such locations as Sambisa represent, right, in the wider scheme of growing the country's tourism potential and also serving as yet another contributor to wider economic growth and development.
So is it one of the clearest examples of economic opportunity lost to insecurity?
Perhaps so. I mean, you could make the argument that there are parts of the Middle Belt, there are pockets of the Niger Delta, there are even parts of the Southwest whose tourism potential, is underutilized at the moment, probably undervalued, some might argue, right? And insecurity has been a very significant contributor to that. In a situation where commuting from major urban centers to these locations, right, is a chore or in many cases can constitute a security nightmare. A lot of these locations are underperforming. In some cases, aren't even performing at all in terms of driving and growing their tourist potential. But Sambisa Forest, more than any other part of the country, because nothing can happen there. It's a hotspot for Boko Haram, and not just one faction of Boko Haram, but at least 3 factions are resident in that region, and so nothing of any significant economic note can happen, right, in that region until the security situation is addressed.
Okay, so how does the Nigerian government turn things around? Assuming you clear the area, how do you then get, first of all, wildlife back there, and then sustain them, and then entice tourists to visit? How does that even work?
It's not clear that addressing the security issue itself would automatically open a path to wider economic renewal for places like Sambisa, right? Just last week, for example, Chad wrote a letter to UNESCO asking that the wider Lake Chad Basin, which was being considered, right, for an addition, right, into the World Heritage Sites list, right, be withdrawn, right, and so for a lot of things to happen, right, in that region, Nigeria needs the collaboration of its neighbors and its partners. You're thinking Chad, Cameroon, and Niger, right, in these ways, because animals and flora, right, do not know human boundaries, or sovereign borders, right, and so there's a lot of that there's a lot of migration, there's a lot of cross-pollination, there's a lot of movement that's happening in these regions. And so just tackling the security situation, while important, and that's a point that we are highlighting in our report, right, doesn't answer the full suite of questions around growing the economic potential of that part of the country. And so the question doesn't lie, with Nigerian commitment and Nigerian movement. We need, close collaborations, with our neighbors and also international partners, right, who are supporting the efforts of the multinational joint task force to deal with the security situation first, but also to address the wider, economic and social and, geographic issues, right, that characterize that part of the country.
Great stuff. Let's move to the Gulf of Guinea and discuss the maritime sector. I think you quoted Allianz Global International Maritime Bureau and the impact of kidnapping. What are we seeing there?
Right, and so the main thing is, for the past 5 years, the Gulf of Guinea has been the unsafest stretch of waterway in the world. We overtook the waters of Somalia right about 2014, 2015, and we remained at the apex. I mean, just in the first quarter of this year, about 49% of all piracy incidents that occurred in the whole world happened in the Gulf of Guinea, right? And so for us, why that's very important to emphasize and crystallize is that questions around growing the country's export base, getting the country to produce more, getting the country to become a more integral participant in the global economic system can't be adequately answered if our waters are unsafe, if the approaches to our main seaports, right, are so unsafe, right, the insurance premiums to Nigerian ports are actually the highest in the world. Right, and so for us, just refocusing the attention of policymakers and also, everyday Nigerians to the reality of the situation that we can diversify the economy and still not reap, right, as much, we might still not reap as much benefits as we should, right, because getting goods and services in and out of the country, right, is very risky. That conversation needs to happen, and that's part of what we try to highlight in the report.
Great stuff. We're showing some stats there. I think another one was that 45% of global piracy in the first quarter of 2020 occurred in the Gulf of Guinea. I mean, that's almost half. So is this still, with regards to what you're talking about with tourism, is this still an issue of collaboration, of working together to try to turn this around? Because the costs have to be incredibly high.
Yes, indeed they are. As a matter of fact, we actually did a separate report that showed that the Lagos ports are actually amongst the most expensive on the continent to get goods in and out of. Right, even when you compare it to some neighboring ports like Tema, for example, in Ghana, or Porto Novo in the Republic of Benin. So yes, regional and international collaboration needs to be strengthened. There's already, a West African regional task force comprised of all maritime West African states, which is geared towards tackling the piracy issue. It's worth noting that the situation, in terms of the full headline numbers, is improving, but on a proportional basis, the Gulf of Guinea still significantly outranks, other important stretches of waterways in terms of its security risk profile. And so international cooperation has to be deepened. It's a vast stretch of waterway. Nigeria's exclusive economic zone is 200 nautical miles, off of our coastline. That's a very large piece of waterway to police. We aren't a green water navy, as it were, and so the resources aren't necessarily available locally or even regionally, right? Because, for all of our underperformance, we're still West Africa's largest navy, and so the resources don't really exist in the region, and that's where collaboration with our international partners, especially in Europe and North America, becomes very important, right? Because if the safety and security of Nigeria's waterways are unsecured, then the wider West African region is at risk, right? So we need to take the lead.
Great stuff.
Cooperation is also required.
Ikemesit Effiong, Head of Research, SBM Intelligence, thank you so much for taking us through that report. Appreciate your time.